bit of a mix-up by Mr. Silly. Hello, I'm Mr. Silly, and I live in a place called Nonsense Land, where the trees are red and the grass is blue and everything is just how it ought to be, except for last week. The week started out all right. On Monday, I got up, brushed my teeth with soap as usual, polished my shoes with toothpaste as usual, and put my hat on. I had breakfast, fried eggs and custard, and went into town to do some shopping. I'd bought a tree the week before, but silly old me, I'd forgotten to buy a hole to plant it in. So I went into town to Miss Privet's garden centre. As I entered the garden centre, a voice said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Silly, but you can't come in here dressed like that." It was Miss Privet. "Why ever not?" I asked. "It's your shoes," said Miss Privet. "What's wrong with them?" I asked. "They're the wrong colour," explained Miss Privet. "You can only go shopping if you have green shoes." "Who says so?" I demanded. "The mayor," said Miss Privet. "It's his new rule for Nonsense Land." And what could I do? I was wearing yellow shoes. So I went home. That night I painted my shoes green. The next morning, after I had had breakfast, porridge trifle, I went back to the garden centre. As I entered, a voice said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Silly, but you can't come in." It was Miss Privet again. "But my shoes are green," I said. "Mondays are a green shoe shopping day, but I'm afraid that Tuesdays are a red shoe shopping day," explained Miss Privet. "What nonsense," I said. "Well, what do you expect?" said Miss Privet. "Well, what colour shoes do I need to go shopping tomorrow?" I asked. "Tomorrow? Let me see," said Miss Privet. "Wednesday is a yellow shoe shopping day." So I went home. That night I washed the green paint off my yellow shoes. The next day, Wednesday, I went into the garden centre wearing my yellow shoes. "Good morning, Mr. Silly," said Miss Privet. "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to buy a hole to plant my tree in," I said. "I am sorry, Mr. Silly, but we don't sell holes, but this might help," she said, offering me a spade. "What good would that be?" I said, and went home. That evening, my friend Mr. Nonsense came for supper. I told him all about the new shopping rules. "I'm fed up," I said. "I think someone should do something about it." "But why don't you try becoming the mayor?" suggested Mr. Nonsense. "They're holding an election on Friday to choose the next mayor." "How do I become mayor?" I asked. "Oh, it's easy. All you have to do is make a speech, and if everybody likes you, then they will choose you as the new mayor." "Well, that does sound easy," I said. "What's for pudding?" asked Mr. Nonsense. "Spam roly-poly." "Oh, goody, my favourite," said Mr. Nonsense. I spent all Thursday thinking about what it would be like to be mayor. And the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea. I thought about all the things I could change. For a start, I would put a stop to all the new shopping rules. And then I could bring in a few new rules of my own. Rather than have boring, stripy zebra crossings, we could have spotty ones and call them leopard crossings. I could make everybody drive backwards, and then they wouldn't crash into each other. And I could make everybody eat their soup with a spoon. It would be marvellous. On Friday, I was so excited that I got up early. I spent the morning practising my speech. And then after lunch, roast cornflakes, I went into town. An enormous crowd had gathered in the town square. Even the king of Nonsense Land was there. The crowd fell silent as I climbed up onto the stage. "I want to be mayor," I began, but before I could say another word, the crowd started to laugh. And they laughed and laughed and laughed. I looked at the king. He was laughing so hard he almost rolled off the stage. Eventually he stopped and raised his arms for silence. "Well, I think that we're all agreed," chuckled the king, "that Mr. Silly's idea is the silliest by far. I declare Mr. Silly the winner." And he handed me a cup. The winner. I had won. But what I had won wasn't the election. I had won the Nonsense Cup. Mr. Nonsense has got the days mixed up. The election wasn't until this week. But when you come to think about it, the idea of me, Mr. Silly, as mayor, is a pretty silly idea. In fact, it's a very silly idea. In fact, it's the sort of idea that would win the Nonsense Cup for the silliest idea of the year. Yeah, and anyway, I've gone off the idea of being mayor. I mean, who would ever eat soup with a spoon? How silly. Everybody knows that you eat soup with a fork.